Hello and welcome to the weekly OKPreps Extra show. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by Barry Lewis. Barry, let's start with Owasso. Just before you and I went live here, Dane Evans announced that he is, in fact, leaving Owasso. He did not say he was going to Union to join Antonio Graham, but that's kind of the inference anyway. And there's a lot of moving parts with this Owasso situation. Bill Haston had the great column on, Drew Frankenfield and what his future might hold. What just kind of makes some sense of what's going on at Owasso now?
Right, as Bill wrote so well during the weekend about that there's a lot of movement going on in the coaching staff at Owasso. Basically, it appears that most of the assistants there are leaving, and Bill Blankenship is going to be bringing in, as most coaches will do, their own assistants. So I think it had been pretty well known that Dane Evans would not be returning to Owasso, even though he was recruited by Bill Blankenship to TU to play football for them, and obviously had a great career at TU. But so Dane Evans don't know where he's going to land next. Could be at the high school level, could be at the college level where he lands. If he lands at the high school level, that may be, at least according to Bill's column, that may be where Owasso's outstanding quarterback Drew Frankenfield will wind up. So there's a lot of potential movement, at least among the coaching staffs, as Owasso assistants appear to be leaving. Dane Evans making it official today that he's going to be elsewhere in the 2025 season. And the talk is that there'll be a lot of Broken Arrow assistants, including Josh Blankenship, going over to Owasso. So very interesting. Last week, of course, there was the announcement that but Owasso's defensive coordinator from the past season, Jaquez Washington, is now Jinx's defensive coordinator. So a lot of movement going on. So, and there could be, and a lot of coaching movement could mean there's a lot of player movement going on as well.
It made me a little sad, Barry. I'm not going to lie. When I read the quote in Haston's column from Drew Frankenfield's dad about Drew Frankenfield having to make a quote business decision. He's a 15-year-old high school kid. I'm not blaming the dad for saying it. That's just where we are, and the rules allow for player movement, so nobody's doing anything wrong here. It just, I don't know. That quote made me a little sad.
Yeah, I mean, Drew Frankenfield's obviously got a great future. You got to be thinking about your future right now, because
Yep.
with so much money available at the college level right now, that you've got to put yourself in the best position to really make a lot of money in college. And but that is a lot of even more pressure on these young student athletes at the high school level.
Yeah. Well, speaking of coaching changes, let's talk about Mason Fine a little bit, a very familiar name in these parts. He's going to be joining Dale Condit at Muskogee. What do you think of that?
Yes, that was quite a move. Mason Fine. Speaking of Dane Evans, we're going to connect Dane Evans and Mason Fine now. That it was only 18 months ago. I remember being at the All-State games, All-State Clinic in the summer of July 2023, and watching a CFL game where Dane Evans and Mason Fine were competing against each other. I thought that was so cool. And here they are so quickly after that. Being a part of the high school scene this last season. Dane Evans, of course, as we talked about, had a great deal to do, had a lot to do with the success of Drew Frankenfield at Owasso. And Mason Fine was on the Salina staff with head coach Scott Harmon there, helping get that program turned around. And now at the age of 27, Oklahoma's all-time career passing yardage leader, Mason Fine, is going to be the offensive coordinator at Muskogee. So very exciting hire by the Roughers.
Are you still a Canadian Football League fan? Do you still watch those games on your phone like you used to?
Not quite as much as I used to. I still really love to watch CFL, but it's not as easy to watch them as it used to be when all the games are on ESPN Plus. They switched carriers. And so on being on ESPN Plus, they're always available on demand. That's not the case now, where there's available on their own streaming service. but you've got to basically watch them live. So, and a lot of times their games are on Friday night, so that's a problem as far as watching the CFL is concerned, because uh, are on Saturday afternoons in the football season, because there's a conflict with either high school or college football. But when I get a chance, I still love to watch the CFL.
One of our most read stories on our website this week, Barry, was the story that you wrote of Jay East from Verdigris going to Jay. What do you make of that?
Travis East, uh,
Travis East. Sorry, thank you.
the second head coach named Travis on the move in this offseason, longtime coach, but Travis East, he had a really great 9 years as head coach of Verdigris. Led them to the semifinals, state semifinals 3 times, led them to the playoffs 6 consecutive years. That was a school that's not really been considered a traditional football powerhouse, but he brought up a consistency of success there. He was there overall 12 seasons, the last 9 as head coach. And now he's got a new challenge as the head coach and athletic director at Jay. And at Jay, he inherits a program that seemed to turn a corner this past season. They got into the playoffs for the first time since 2017 under Eddie Barnwell, their head coach who was retiring, and their athletic director is retiring too. So those positions opened up, and they got Travis East. So a great hire by Jay. So another longtime Tulsa area head coach is on the move.
I want to go back to Mason Fine for just a second, Barry. Have you talked with him much through the years? Like, do you know him much?
I wouldn't say I know him much. I mean, I talked with him back in his high school days, but haven't talked to him since then.
Did he give
I think the
off?
last time I talked to him was at the All-State game, which when you think about it, it's really remarkable that he got to play in the All-State game, because most of the times major college players don't get to play in the All-State game anymore, but he did. So I think that's the last time I talked with him.
When you said that he was 27 years old, that kind of jumped out at me. He's a new coach, just getting into the game, obviously a highly accomplished athlete, still young enough to connect with high school kids, you would think. I'm just wondering, when you talked to him back in the day, if he kind of gave off that vibe that this is a future coach someday. Because some high school kids have that vibe to them. They just have a certain, whether it's maturity or leadership quality about them, they just like, you know what? I can see you being a coach someday with the way you kind of carry yourself and handle yourself. Did you get that vibe with Mason at all?
Yes, I got that. I'm not going to say, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would have said I would have got a 10 on the coaching vibe, because there's so much that goes into coaching. I knew, if you would ask me then if Mason Fine, could you see Mason Fine being a coach someday? I would have said yes, though. Especially, how smart a quarterback he was. And just, yeah, I thought he would be a really good candidate if that's what he wanted to do. So it's, to me, he's got pretty much most everything, at least at this point in his career, that you'd want. He's had success at every level,
Mhm.
especially at the high school and college level, and he had some good moments in the CFL as well. And I mean, just like you can say the same with Dane Evans too. So uh, I wouldn't be surprised to see Mason Fine as a head coach if that's what he wanted to be, and I'm assuming he probably will want to be someday. Um, he can do. I think the sky's the limit for him in the coaching field.
I got that. I got the coaching vibe when I talked to Stephen Kittleman, former Jinx quarterback, now at TU. When he and I sat down for a podcast when I was doing a TU podcast, we had a good 25-minute chat or so, and he just screamed future coach to me. He just, and I think that's what he wants to do. There's no shock there, but sometimes you just talk, especially quarterbacks, right? Sometimes you just talk to these kids and they're like, yeah, you sound like a coach and you're 20 years old or whatever.
Oh, absolutely. And I agree with you 100% on Stephen Kittleman, remembering back in the Jinx days, and obviously seeing what he's done to prepare himself for that at the University of Tulsa. Yes, you just get that feeling. It's just sort of like, I'll go all the way back 40 years. Kevin Pritchard, in shifting sports to basketball, I could tell. I mean, he's like on a scale of 1 to 10, this is like a 10 plus. When I would talk with him in his senior year at Edison,
Hmm.
which is my first year on the high school basketball beat. The way he knew players like from every team and talked about them and talked about their games, I said, "Oh wow! If one day he wants to be a head coach in the, I was thinking college level, yeah, he definitely could be." So it was never not surprising that he went on to become a general manager, a longtime general manager in the NBA, because even back in his high school days, I don't know if there's ever been a player so knowledgeable about the players on every other team in the area as Kevin Pritchard was back when he was a senior at Edison High School.
What's he doing these days?
General manager with Indiana.
He's still in the NBA. Okay, I wasn't sure if he was still in the NBA or um I think Kevin Pritchard was the first Tulsa local high school basketball star I saw in person. I think I was 10 years old. I saw him at some tournament, and my brother, who's quite a bit older than me and would often turn me on to certain things, athletes, whatnot. I had no idea anything about Kevin Pritchard. I was 10 years old, but he said, "We're going to go watch this kid play from Edison, and he's really, really good. You need to watch him." And that was Kevin Pritchard. And he was like he was young then, maybe a sophomore. He was a young kid even then. And anyway, so he said Kevin Pritchard, that's where my mind goes immediately, watching
Well,
him when I was 10 years old.
yeah, when Kevin Pritchard, I also sort of connect him in a way because that was my first year really on the high school beat at the Tulsa Tribune on the high school basketball, being in charge of high school basketball. And that year was also Lee Mayberry's sophomore season at Rogers. And so those are two of the dominant players and also one of the most physically gifted players I've ever seen at the high school level, Richard Dumas
Yep.
of Washington was a junior that year. And of course, he went on to play in the NBA. Lee Mayberry played in the NBA and now doing a great job as Cassia Hall's coach. Wrote about him earlier this week. They're a team that could go all the way in 3A. So it's great to see him having that success and wondering where the last 40 years went. And so you had Lee Mayberry, Richard Dumas, and Kevin Pritchard all that season, all go on to play in the NBA. So that was a pretty exciting times, fun watching them. I have a lot of good memories.
Yeah, what a great history we have. We talk a lot about our history in football and how great football is in this area, and it is. But we have legit basketball history in this area with just not only the players you mentioned, but a number of others. We're lucky. We got really good sports in this high school sports in this area.
Absolutely.
So, well, speaking of high school sports, Barry, exciting time. The all world process is ongoing. We're shooting some photos today on the first floor. Next week, we're going to reveal some all world teams. What can you say about all that?
Yes, we're in the stretch run. We've got next week, we'll be unveiling all the all world honors for the fall sports. We'll start off with softball and go to cross country, then to volleyball, and then finish up the week with all world football and all state football. So we've got a lot of exciting sports, high school sports honors to reveal next week.
Yeah, always a thrilling time. We are going to have our annual Bill Knight Automotive All World Awards. That'll be this summer at a date and venue to be named later, but we are going to have it. So, always a great time honoring all the high school accomplishments in this area. Anything else on your mind, Barry, or shall we leave it there for this week?
I think this is the last big tournament week for high school basketball during the regular season. So for teams in the lower classifications, it's a time for them to make their move as far as getting those to beat the rankings deadline, which helps determine all the postseason matchups. Don't have to worry about that in 5A and 6A anymore. District standings do it all there. It just simplifies things easily. And just to clear up some confusion that people may be having on the basketball pages that we do, that the reason I am doing the 6A and 5A rankings since the OSSA doesn't release those rankings, doesn't have those rankings. So I'm the one putting those together. And then the 4A through Class B, those are the OSSA rankings. We try to make that clear, but but I know there's a little confusion with some people. We think 6A and 5A teams should have their rankings too, and to help let people know what type of game they're seeing. There's always something about saying, oh, the number 1 versus number 5 teams are playing. So That's
Why
why,
doesn't the OSSAA do 6A, 5A rankings?
because they don't need to do it anymore. They don't do rankings unless they have to do rankings for postseason pairings. And so that's why they got out of the 6A and 5A rankings business for the most part, except they will come out with rankings in the preseason to help determine districts, and they will come out with them after the area tournaments for seeding for the state tournament,
Okay.
which led to controversy last year when Booker T and Edison in
Yep.
boys were matched up immediately in the state quarterfinals after they had just played in the area tournament. So that was ridiculous.
Forgot about that. Now, all of the state tournament is at the big house this year. Yes.
Yes, to celebrate their 60 years and their final year of being in that building.
Yeah. All right. We'll leave it there for this week. Great stuff as always, Barry. Barry and I will be back next week. Thanks for watching.